Extra Time on Tipp FM, powered by Munster Solar, your local solar experts, delivering clean, cost-effective energy solutions for a brighter tomorrow. See munstersolar.ie.
Hello, good evening and welcome to another edition of Extra Time. My name is Ronan Quirk. We're here until 8 o'clock this evening. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah, plenty to reflect on this evening as the curtain has finally come down on the Tipperary's Munster Senior Hurling Championship with defeat in Limerick at the hands of the hosts. It finished Limerick 5-27. Tipperary 25 points. Defeat also for our footballers up in Antrim in the Tailteann Cup, but they do have one final bite of the cherry when they are away to Wicklow in a fortnight's time. We'll have reaction and analysis to both those events, and we'll also hear from Murtagh Brennan, CEO of the Tipperary County Board, on the passing of Liz Howard, who was so dedicated to GAA and to Camogie and to Gaelic games and her own parish and her own club, and passionate about so many different aspects of Gaelic games throughout her life. I'm here long enough to know when Liz was PRO of the county board. When I joined Tipp FM first, she was PRO of the county board, and it was always very accommodating to us throughout her tenure as that, always very accommodating when she was the president of the Camogie Association, and even into retirement was always full of opinions and never shy to come on and give her opinions. And you mightn't have always agreed with Liz, but you had to admire the passion with which she held her views and articulated so coherently her views. And the GA world is slightly lesser for Liz Howard's passing. May she rest in peace. We'll also hear from David Burns on the Irish Guineas horse racing, because it was a great success as well for Aidan O'Brien. We'll talk to him, David, about that. And we've got local soccer with Barry Ryan, the TSDL, coming to a fitting climax as the Tipperary Cup is on this coming Friday night. TSDL Premier Division Shields were on this weekend, and also the FAI Junior Cup. St Michael's involved in that. We'd love to hear from you. Our text number is 083 311 3311. That number works for WhatsApp messages as well. We're on Blue Sky. Our Blue Sky handle is Extra Time at bsky.social, but that text number and message number for WhatsApp is 083 311 3311. Don't forget, we're looking for nominations for the Tipp FM Sports Star of the Month for May, because we're coming to the end of May, and if you've seen something that you think is worthy of a nomination, send an email to sportstar@tippfm.com. That's sportstar@tippfm.com. Maybe it's Charlene Maudsley who has set a new personal best, I think her third in about a week, and she's almost at the point now of breaking that 50-second barrier. She is the second fastest European so far this year, and is, to say the least, in a rich vein of form ahead of the European Championships, which take place in Birmingham later this summer. Don't forget that text number again, 083 311 3311. Let's go to audio, because Liam Cahill spoke for a long time, it has to be said, to the media assembled under the Mackey stand in Limerick after the final whistle in the Gaelic rounds yesterday. Paul Carroll asking the questions.
I think, and we will reflect now, and there's no one person or anybody greater than Tipperary, and it's going to be a job of work now again to make sure that we circle the wagons and we make sense of this year in 2026 and look forward to 2027.
Before you've made all those reflections, do you have anything in your head now as to why this year has gone so differently to maybe last year?
Not really, I suppose. At the moment, it's all about coming into form, isn't it? We had it's tough, I suppose. When you do climb the mountain to win a Liam McCarthy, it's just that little bit more difficult with everything that comes with it. From the whole side of commitments, and lots of players, I suppose, being dragged left, right, and centre, and part and parcel of celebrating something so wonderful, but just getting back that little bit later to training, and it's something that we'll all reflect on and see where we can go to make sure that, I suppose, our mindset is in a better place when we approach what needs to be done for 2027.
Were you worried coming in here today that just because we were already out and Limerick had something to play for, that something like what happened could possibly happen?
Look, Paul, it's a very fair question. You'd always be a little concerned, obviously, when you're coming for a dead rubber game, and obviously the the week that is after exiting the championship, morale is not where it needs to be in the camp, and there's a lot of disappointed bodies in there, and players and everybody involved in the setup. So, but all I can say is that they have been really proper Tipperary people all week. They rolled up their sleeves, came into training Tuesday night, soaked up what has come at them, and really tried to put their best foot forward. And for long periods today, again, like we were really good in patches of our play. Obviously started the second half, we got ripped open, but that first half of hurling, there was a lot to like about us, even though we gave away an early goal as well. And the boys showed great resilience and fight. They fought to the bitter end today, which I'm immensely proud of them for. And just look at these boys owe us in Tipperary nothing. They owe me nothing. They're a really, really great bunch of people to be working with, and I'm just so disappointed for them because of the effort they put in, Paul. So and look, when things happen like this in Tipperary, there's always a case of reviewing and reflection, and there will be fairly sizable postmortems now around what has worked and what hasn't this year to see can we improve for 2027. But look, the thing is, there's none of us shying away from that. Personally, and any of them players inside, they know the magnitude that is playing for Tipperary and what's required. And we all know we fell short this year, and we'll be a first to own that and go back and look at it and see how we can go about it. But at the end of the day, we all have to be really mindful that these players in particular are amateur players, and they're getting a fair bit of criticism by a lot of platforms, especially nameless ones that which are easy to hide behind, and even some nameless platforms that use the Tipperary logo and use titles like Premier this and Tipperary that, and really they're not Tipperary people. They're a joke, actually, to be honest, and really disappointed that our so-called own would revert to that kind of scrutiny of players that put their hand up to play for Tipperary. So we just have to keep that outside noise. And the only thing is with the likes of that is it just creates an old narrative out there to people that are listening to them and reading them, and creates that extra little bit of pressure on us all. I'd really love to, I suppose, know these people behind these faceless accounts. Have they child welfare courses done, Garda vetting done? Are they training under 10s and under 8s in their own clubs? Are they even club members? They're probably not. So, but anyway, I'm not going to be able to stop them saying what they say or do what they do, but I just ask them to be mindful, especially of their players. I don't care what they say or write about me. That's I'm happy enough to know what comes with being the Tipperary manager, but just be easy on them boys inside, because they are our players, and we need to look after them.
And just last one for me, Liam, you mentioned, I think, after the Waterford game in the league that you're kind of giving a reminder that this kind of is a squad in transition. I suppose from the results of this year, I suppose that transition probably has to kind of happen now in the next few years with the playing squad.
Yeah, it has, and we know that. Look, in 2023, when I was very privileged and honoured to be given the job of managing Tipperary senior hurlers, it was a huge task then, and we've made some strides along the way. Lots of players introduced. Got a real good, I suppose, flow to our rhythm and play last year that brought us all the way to the summit. And some people as well, I suppose, in fairness, they've come for this group, which is terribly unfair, because All Ireland medals are hard won by, and there's some of us old enough here, I think, to remember. Definitely you, John, anyway. the lucky bag you buy in the shop, and I've said this to the players several times. All Ireland medals don't come in lucky bags, and there's some pundits, analysts, and former players out there that would hope that they did come in lucky bags, but they don't. And whoever will win the All-Ireland in 2026 will have earned it, just like Tipperary earned it in 2025 and Clare the year before. And that's just the way it is. All-Ireland medals are difficult, and what comes with it then, trying to retain it, is huge as well. And that's why I have huge admiration for them boys down the end of end of the pitch here today. Limerick that have the history of being able to do it consistently, and the great Kilkenny team before that. And if we're proper, honest GA people, we'll acknowledge that as well. It's a huge feat to try and go back to back. And all we can say now is we'll soak up what we have to. We'll lick our wounds. We'll do what Tipperary people do. We come back again, and we wish whatever teams are left in the championship the very best of luck.
That's Liam Cahill speaking to the assembled media, and he gave a long time with the media, asking lots of questions. We wouldn't have time to play it all out for you, but it gives you an indication of the importance I think Liam placed on what he had to say, that he spent so much time dedicated to it, and it's obviously something that has irked him enormously, the amount of anonymous abuse that has been hurled at some of his players over the course of the last fortnight. But we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about the game itself, and we're going to talk about the year in general. JJ Kennedy's with me. How are you, JJ?
Hi, Ronan.
JJ, I'm going to read a text that's come in. It's quite a long one. It's come from a listener called Patrick, and he says, I want you to read this out if you don't mind. Some stark facts for you. In the last 5 years, Tipperary have played 20 round-robin games, but only won 3. In the last 3 years, Tipperary played 12 round-robin games, but only won 2. In the 3 years, 22, 24, 26, when we played Limerick and Waterford away, Clare and Cork at home, our record is 2 draws and 10 losses. To conclude, in the last 3 years, we've played 13 championship games versus Munster teams and only won 3. I accept over the last 3 years Limerick have been exceptional and we just aren't good enough to beat them, but in the other 9 games against Clare, Waterford and Cork we've only won 2 games. To me this merits serious discussion. Is the brilliant win of 2025 covering over our dreadful record generally in Munster? I'd surprised if you're not shocked by the above stats. So what I don't want though is some sort of revisionism on 2025. The records show Tipperary won an All-Ireland final in 2025 and that'll never be taken from it, and I don't want it in any way come across as diluting that, but I do think that his stats merit some discussion about our record in the round robin.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and we're well aware of all those stats, and as you say, the record in the round robin, not just Liam Cahill's, but the record since the round robin began, in fact, isn't great. But I think you have to put it in the context of, after 2019, and I think the round robin began in 18, was it? But after 2019, we were in a sort of transitional phase. The great team that had won All Ireland's 2010, 2016, 2019, that era team was fading away. They were slipping away. The best of them had retired, and you were in a phase of trying to redevelop and to come again. You have to put it in that context. That's where we were at, and it has been a very sort of checkered progress since then, showing some promise, some days, some good days, a lot of bad days, and out of the whole thing, Liam managed to put together an extraordinary year, as you say, in 2025, and I agree with you totally. I think it is absolutely crucial that there's no devaluing of 2025. We will have plenty of people outside the county, particularly, not to mention some within the county, but we'll have the outsiders who will revel in Tipperary's discomfort, if you like, and they'll be very quick to talk about 2025 as a lucky win and all of that, which it wasn't. Just look at the records. I mean, some people even suggest, well, Tipperary weren't the best team in 2025, which is absolute nonsense. They absolutely were. They beat everybody that came before them. They're starting with a draw with Limerick. Limerick couldn't beat them. The only championship match they lost was that one against Cork with the sending off and all that. And they beat all the major hurling counties, from Galway to Cork in the final, to Kilkenny in the semi-final, Waterford and so on, Clare. So it absolutely stands on its merit as an outstanding achievement last year. And I think that's the fact that was achieved, and it's put against the background of a team that was in transition anyway, makes the defeats, I suppose, and the nature of some of the defeats stand out all the more. And when you look at yesterday's game, wasn't the defeat that mattered. It was, I suppose, again, it was just the nature of it and the extent of it. The biggest margin since 47 against Limerick. I think that's what hurts probably. And
first time we've conceded 5 goals, I think, since 1973 when we conceded 6.
3, yeah. I remember 73 well.
Yeah. But in 73 we only lost by a point or two. We
were lost by a single point.
Yeah, despite conceding 6 goals. Yeah. Anyway,
but a different type of game and so on. But you know, that's the sore point. I think just that when we are being defeated, we tend on occasions to slump to very heavy defeats, and that's the part, I suppose, that's difficult to get your head around and difficult to rationalise, and it's the one that will probably be mulled over in the weeks and months ahead most.
Yeah, it probably will. On the game itself, it must be very hard to get yourself ready for a championship match when you know that your season is done. And, you know, even professional players, when they know their season is done, they're almost kind of wishing it to be over. And, Liam in his interview said, that they came in on Tuesday, they worked and trained, rolled up their sleeves. But when you concede a goal after a couple of seconds, it kind of suggests there's either you weren't mentally prepared for what was coming, or you I don't know. That's what it suggested to me, and I don't know if that's a fair or an unfair analysis. I don't want to run any player down, but it's understandable to a certain extent why those players wanted the season just to end.
Yeah, it is perfectly so. And when we were going down to Limerick yesterday, I suppose we were hoping that there'd be some sort of a statement from the team, and that they'd throw off the shackles and they'd give it a right good wallop. And we didn't expect them to win, but that they'd give it a really huge effort to try and restore pride. But actually, the more you thought about it on the way down, even the more you were inclined to say, they're on a hiding to nothing here. They really are. It's kind of a no-win. Morale is very low. It has to be low. How can you possibly get yourself up after the Clare game and your exit from the championship to try and put in a huge effort here? You might try and convince yourself that you are in the right place, but really when it comes to it, you're not. And I think that showed in the match. There were phases in the match, particularly in the first half, I suppose, after we gave away those 2 very preventable goals. They were hammer blows, but there was phases then for the remainder of the first half where we were going toe-to-toe with Limerick.
Absolutely.
It was kind of pedestrian enough hurling, but we were in there and we were getting point for point, and we're actually out-pointing them. And you were saying, maybe this won't be too bad. Maybe we're staying with them. But then I think the penalty early in the second half was what finished the game. It was over. I thought it was over at that stage. There was no coming back, and it was only going to be a matter of what the end margin would be from there on. But I have sympathy for the players. I think it's understandable. I mean, where their headspace was going into that game, as you rightly point out, you couldn't be in the right headspace for it. It's a game you didn't want. You had to go through the motions, and you were against the Limerick team that has that kind of ruthless capacity to really expose any flaws at all in your makeup. And they were so clinical, the chances they got. They had a lot of wides, I suppose, from the going for points and that, but my God, when the goal chances came, they just took them absolutely ruthlessly, and we paid the price for it.
Noel Dundon's also with us. Good evening to you, Noel.
Good evening, Roland. How are you?
I'm well. Noel, I'm going to give you an argument and also contradict myself at the same time. Is it fair to say that both Kilkenny and Tipperary have struggled to come to terms with the new age of the Kiley Kinnerk driven age of hurling and passing it through the lines and all that sort of stuff? Yet at the same token, the only county who's won more All-Irelands in the last 10 years is Limerick. Then you come Tipperary if you look at 16, 19 and 25. So, and you look at Kilkenny and where they're at. So maybe the 2 blue ribbons of hurling need to kind of get with the programme when it comes to how to win matches in the Munster Championship nowadays.
Yeah, that's a big question.
I know.
But none of us are asking that this time last year, when we won the All-Ireland. And I suppose to be fair about it, we lost to Cork last year, albeit it had a big asterisk beside it, and we drew with Limerick. So we won a game and we won 2 games and drew a game. But in terms of where Tipperary are at, you would kind of suggest that we're possibly in a a far better position than Kilkenny in the sense that, we're very recent All-Ireland winners, and we have had quite a considerable degree of success at underage level, playing different types of styles. Now, some people mightn't like the kind of style that the under-20s have been playing. The minor is different again, and the senior, and I kind of half believe that could be part of our problem, Roland, that we're playing so many different styles, whereas you look at your Limericks and the likes, and it's the one style is going through all of their teams, but yeah, I mean, the hurling goes through phases. When Clare were on top in the Ger Loughnane era, everybody was trying to get with that kind of a system and that kind of physicality and fitness. Then the Limerick team comes along full of power. But I think the Limerick team is a generational team. It's going to be very, very difficult for Limerick to amalgamate another body of players of the calibre of and men of the physicality of the likes of Kyle Hayes and Gerard Hegarty and Diarmuid Burns and all these boys. And then you throw in Aaron Gillan, probably one of the finest forwards that we've seen in the modern game. So it's going to be very difficult for them to throw that group of players, a similar group of players together again. I think Babs alluded to that there last week as well,
Yeah, okay. I mean, the only saving grace we'll have is that all those players should retire at the same time because they were all in the same underage team, but maybe I'm clutching at straws.
Yeah, but there is the feel as well around Limerick, and even talking to a good few of the Limerick lads below in the press box yesterday, and that there is the feel that this is one that they've really targeted, that I won't say it's the last hurrah for them or anything like that, but that it's one that they've really, really gone all out for, and they certainly look to be in that kind of form. Really blowing everybody out of the water. But it's early days yet in terms of a championship. A lot can happen in the next couple of weeks.
That's true, and I'm going to, JJ, come back to you because, Liam Cahill said in his press conference yesterday that he was going to have uncomfortable meetings with the county board ahead, and there will be some sort of a governance review of where the season went and all the rest. But, I mean, you talk about rebuilding and transition periods and all that sort of stuff, and you talk about underage success. I mean, is it time for a 5-year plan of where we want Tipperary to go and how we're going to write our Munster championship record? Because it seems to me, and I'm not in any way very well qualified in this, but if you're going to start solving Tipperary's up and down form over the last number of years, you're going to have to do something about that Munster championship record first and central.
Yeah, but the one thing I would say about Liam Cahill, and I mean the record is what it is, and we've got to live with that. And I don't know how you're going to tackle that, because I think there's probably a bit of puzzlement all around as to why a team can go from the highs of last year to the low of match against Clare or match against Limerick or whatever. That kind of swinging from one extreme to the other, it's hard to kind of rationalise that. The one thing I would say about Liam Cahill, and he's going into he has another year on his term as manager, is that he has shown a capacity right throughout his managerial career to turn around pretty grim situations. I mean, going right back to his minor days, 2015 and so on. Very disappointing All-Ireland final defeat and for the minors, and there was the issue of the dual player, and Cahill took it on head on and came back 2016 much stronger and had a resounding All-Ireland minor win. 2018 with the under-21s, again the same thing, very low point when Cork hammered us down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in Munster, and again he reinvented it and reignited the whole thing and came back and it beat them in the All-Ireland final. A Cork team, of course, that had a lot of them are playing senior for them now. Yeah. And then you go to 24, another low point at the hands of Cork when they beat us that particular year, and he turns it around in 2025 and he reaches the summit. So he has history for managing to transform pretty grim situations and turning them into goals. So that's the challenge for him now again, I think, to take the present situation and to lift it again for 2027. And I'm confident that he'll have a right crack at this, probably with a restructured setup. And incidentally, this talk about styles, I think, can be overdone. Because at the end of the day, you can have whatever style you like if you don't have the players to implement it. Yeah. And that's the bottom line. It's players who win matches, not particular styles.
Noel, I know you're under pressure, so I'll ask you one last question. And to pick up on what JJ said about Liam has a track record of picking teams up from low points, but he also has a very good track record of developing youngsters. And we do have some very, very good youngsters. Now, not everyone who stars at under 20 and minor makes it to a superstar at senior level, but if there was anyone in the county who probably has a track record of developing players, Cal's name would certainly be up there.
Absolutely, Ronan, and I suppose it goes back to the question that was asked at the end of 2024. Is Liam Cahill the man to take Tipperary forward in 25? And he did, and we went on and won the All Ireland. And I have no doubt in my mind that he's the man to take Tipperary forward after this setback as well. And I think JJ is dead right too when he mentions about the styles thing, and it's probably a criticism that I would have had of a lot of coaches who were going around the county with different club teams, and they tried to impose their own particular preference or style on a club team without maybe taking into account the players at their disposal within that club team. And it's the same at inter-county level. That the manager has to play to the strengths of the players that he has at his disposal, and that's what Liam has been doing, I think, and trying to do, and did so very successfully last year. So look, we're at a low ebb at the minute. I met Len Gaynor in Park na Gael yesterday evening after the game, and we just kind of said, look, we have to take the rough with the smooth. We were all on a high last year after winning the All Ireland, and we're down in the doldrums a little bit at the moment. But the club championships will kick off in a couple of weeks' time, and we'll be all back out watching matches and all that. It is very disappointing, though, that it will be next January before we see a Tipp jersey in action again at senior level. But that's just the way it is,
Noel, I know you're under pressure. Thanks for your time tonight.
No problem, Roland. Take care.
Not at all. That's Noel Dundon with us. One texter says, remember the hurt of 2 years ago, and again this year, bottle it. This can be a catalyst. Keane Tracy's also joining us. Good evening to you, Keane.
Hi, Ronan.
Keane, your thoughts on the game itself yesterday, because I know you were on comms duty for us.
Yeah, it was a really difficult game for Tipperary. We kind of all thought that going down to Park na Gael yesterday that it was going to be a difficult assignment. Historically, we have struggled. If you look at our last 7 games against Limerick, we've lost by an average of 10 points. Obviously, taking 2 draws into account in 25 and 23. But if you look at the games they've beaten us in 9 games, in total, it's been a 10-point average. And we've really struggled in the Gaelic grounds where we lost by 15 and 17 points respectively. So you knew it was going to be tough. And the message all week, I'm sure, from Liam and his backroom team were a fast start. And then after 12 seconds, Galan gets the goal. And you're kind of thinking, and we certainly thought in the press box, this spells trouble. Aidan O'Connor gets a softish goal, and you find yourself 9 points down early on. And credit to the guys, they really put in a shift in that first half to go in only 5 down. Almost from the throw-in, again, the black card for Owen Connolly and the penalty brilliantly dispatched by Dermot Burns, and you knew it was going to be a long second half. And it really felt at times in that second half that you were playing against a different calibre player altogether. They were just so physically strong, their use of the ball, their movement, and we just really struggled, Ronan, to deal with it.
Yeah, we did. And I was talking to JJ, still with us, but I was talking to JJ about it earlier. When you know your season is done and dusted, it can, even no matter how much you try and build yourself up for it, no matter how much you want to atone for it, it's a very difficult space to be when you know that you're only playing for pride.
It's incredibly hard, and it's hard to go into championship games when they mean everything, but when it did mean a huge amount to Tipperary panel management yesterday, but it is hard when you have a Limerick juggernaut in full flow. And I really thought as well, in the Gaelic grounds, they have an 80%, almost 80% win record in the Gaelic grounds, and the music was blaring. There was a huge Limerick crowd, very, very vociferous crowd, and it really felt like a carnival atmosphere down there, and it was a real Lions Den. And it's something that in Thurles we need to learn from, that Thurles seems to be a home to everyone, the home of hurling, and it doesn't seem as tough a place to go to as other venues. Limerick yesterday really felt like a cauldron for this Tipperary team, and you saw the reaction to Noel coming off, and it was, the Tipperary supporters there gave him a really deserved send-off. But when Kyle Hayes and Aaron Gillan left, it reminded me of way back in 2014 when Larry Corbett left the field against Galway in Thurles in the qualifier, where we came back And one of the national newspapers likened it to Jesus entering Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. The crowd rose, the stadium shook. It was the same for Gillane and Kyle Hayes. I think that's the atmosphere we need to bring back, and we're looking for answers. And I think one of the big answers for us is that we need to make Thurles a cauldron and a place that teams hate coming. And really, we have a very poor record in the Munster round robin in Thurles, and it's something I'm sure Liam and his management team will be trying to address as we go into next season.
No doubt about it. JJ, I sat down with Tommy Dunn at the start before the championship threw in, and Brendan and Shamie Callanan as well, and Tommy made the point to me. He said, I don't think people realise just how hard it is to win stuff, because so many teams are so good and the margins are so small. And he made the point that winning doesn't happen in a straight line, and he made lots of very valid, coherent points that you'd expect from Tommy Dunn, and everything he said is absolutely correct. So with that in mind, and bearing in mind the long winter we'll have without Championship hurling to reflect on, what do you think is kind of the strategy that Tipperary hurling needs to employ? I know that's a huge question, bearing in mind the dust is barely settled on it, but surely there has to be some sort of a strategy put in place to try and ensure that we're more competitive into the latter parts of the championship every year.
Yeah, well, I guess, there's going to be a period of introspection, I suppose, now at this stage, and there's going to be lots of analysis and mulling over what went wrong, I suppose, and where we're positioned at this particular stage. And we'll have the county championship to maybe provide some evidence of what's available out there. And I would imagine that Liam Cahill and his management will do some reviewing in terms of the panel. There's the whole issue of whether there'll be retirements or whatever. Will this be a sort of significant year from that perspective, both for Tipperary and Kilkenny, by the way? Are there a few players that may step away from the team at this stage? We'll have to wait and see. That's their decision to make. There'll certainly, I'd imagine, be a major shake-up in the panel, and who's on it and who's not on it and so on, and there will be new guys coming into it, and it's a matter of resetting and refocusing. I mean, what plans can you make other than you kind of reset and you refocus? You try to take on board the lessons from the last year, and I think one of those big ones from Liam Cahill's perspective will be that you can't limp through the league and hope to get going immediately once the championship starts. You have to go after the league, so you have to be ready for that, and you'll have a clear run at that in next year, this winter and the coming winter and next year, because there's no distraction from here out. So it's a resetting, it's a refocusing, and other than that, there isn't too much more you can do. You look at your resources and you try to reframe the whole thing and see what's went right and what went wrong, and make amends when you get back to the training field next November or whenever.
Yeah, it's true. Gentlemen, I've got to go, but thank you for your championship contributions throughout the course of the last couple of weeks, and indeed your league contributions as well. We look forward to hearing from you as the county championship goes on, and we'll chat hurling, I'm sure, no doubt. I'll bring JJ on to talk about black cards periodically, because he's got a good analytical brain of it. I won't even talk to you about black cards from yesterday, I don't have time, but thanks for your time, JJ, and thanks indeed, Keane. Take care. JJ Kennedy and Keane. Tracy joining us there. So many texts, I couldn't possibly read them all out. We must remember it's 21 years since Cork won in All Ireland, since one texter. Somebody else says our team are too old. I'm not too sure about that. Stephen Tobin's they got another year of under 20, for crying out loud. Oisin O'Donoghue, who's under 20, and a number of players are just out of the under 21 ranks. Yes, there's some players who are coming towards the end of they're in the autumn of their careers, but like they always talk about having a good balance between youth and experiences, and that's what makes a great team. Says one texter. Anyway, 083 311 3311. I'm going to change codes completely now and go to football, because Tipperary were in action in Curragh Park yesterday and defeated at the hands of Antrim in the round 2 of the Tailteann Cup. As I said earlier, we will have another shot at this because we'll be playing Wicklow in fortnight's time. But let's hear the reaction from Niall Fitz, who spoke to Stephen Gleeson at the full-time whistle.
Yeah, obviously fierce disappointed with the result firstly, but disappointed with elements of the performance. Like, we didn't show ourselves at all and for long periods of the game. It's just like some of the mistakes for the goals were cruel, but Yeah, overall disappointing. I didn't think we got much our way during the game. I thought there was a few big decisions there that happened that just didn't fall our way. But look, no excuses. We're disappointed.
Antrim got a couple of those calls early on. They pushed on in the game, 2-6 in the first half. They struck 2-6 again in the second, and it was hard to find any rhythm, I suppose, when they got those goals. And they had that advantage then at the break and again in the second half when they got the goals before Tipp got them.
Oh yeah, look, you're chasing the game there. There was a breeze there, but we had it in the second half, and then we had a chance to we hit the post there. If that goes in, at the start of the second half, and suddenly you're in a real good place, but we left a lot of chances behind us today, like as well, and that's disappointing. I think even in the first half, like we had a lot of possession there and just going into trouble, and I don't know, real poor decision making, and we weren't happy with that at all.
Well, we missed a bit of physicality up top when Stephen O'Brien came on. He got a goal and energised the thing a bit, but Antrim were very strong there in defence physically.
Yeah, look, I thought we, Dahi there had them in trouble in the first half. Like, he got a lot of ball, just didn't convert it. Yeah, maybe so. The reality of the situation we're in is Stephen didn't have a full game in him, so But look, the positive would be the impact that our bench had. I thought Paddy Creedon did very well when he came in. I thought Stephen did well when he came in. We're hopefully 2 weeks' time, we're in a position to give a better performance.
Always going to be hard coming up here to Curragh and Park, and they have some very strong players in attack there. They were running through the middle when they got a couple of the goals. The environment here, it's a difficult one to come up. There probably isn't a huge excuse for the whole occasion, but at the same time, you're in with a shout now, as you said.
Yeah, look, we have another game, so it is what it is. I mean, if you go back to the goals, two of the goals came there from what we felt were blatant frees that we didn't get, blatant frees. Again, we'll look back at it, but I just can't get my head around some of the decisions.
That's Niall Fitzgerald speaking to Stephen Gleeson, who joins me on the line. How are you, Stephen?
Good, Ronan. Good to chat to Stephen.
He sounded so disappointed. He's barely trying to mask his disappointment in that interview, Niall Fitzgerald, because I think he went to Antrim with high hopes, and then Tipperary did stage a comeback, but Antrim just nullified it at the end.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment of it, really, and you can hear it in Niall's voice there, and Tipp, I think, really went up there believing they could really put it up to Antrim and get something out of the game, and I would have felt that they would have as well, going on the bounce from the win last time out, because Tipp had a good win in Sligo, but credit Antrim. Mark Jordan was immense at 7 for them, Paddy McAleer in around centre field, and Ryan McQuillan at 11 seemed to get the ball in around midfield and just solo, and he found the gaps in the first half, and 2 goals were a huge shock to Tipperary because they were well in the game early on and they were playing reasonably well under pressure because Antrim had a really strong wind and they were attacking all the time. But any attack that was going up there, the Tipp defence was dealing with it well. James Morris, Emmett Maloney was coming out with ball, Charlie King was as well, but they just found a gap, got the goal, and then another one before half-time, and it was just a completely different game because you had a huge Antrim crowd with a big roar, and they had the second goal before the break, and all of a sudden Tipp had a huge mountain to climb at the start of the second half. Now, they did have the wind, but Antrim know how to play with the wind up there, the prevailing breeze, and they really just shut down shop and didn't give Tipp time on the ball in the second half to have a go. And Tipp did have 1 goal chance.
I was going to say, Dahi Hogan, wasn't it? Is that what you're going to bring up?
Yeah, Dahi Hogan was excellent in terms of speed and bursting through and finding space in front of the goals, but just couldn't convert. And like Antrim definitely had their homework done on how Tipperary play, and they just stopped the ball going to Keane Smith, Sean O'Connor, Micheál Freeney as well, who have been, the go-to players to get the scores. And Antrim just has, a player there shadowing these lads. Anytime the ball was in the vicinity, he was out in front. The ball wasn't going to Sean O'Connor, it wasn't going to Keane Smith. And that really just, I think just annoyed Tipp, and the game just got away from him. And a couple of close calls went against Tipperary as well in the first half, and again in the second, when they looked like they could be mounting a comeback. And it's just those type of frees, like one that was on the 45 and it was called back to be taken from the 65 instead of the play rolling on. These type of things, and it was really tough. And like there was a high blow to Paddy Feehan in the second half, and like there was no free given as a result, and it looked like a card. But those things seem to go against you then when you're away from home, and maybe they're just magnified from a Tipp point of view when things were going against you and you needed absolutely something to get into the game.
Yeah, and do you know Tipp have Wicklow next. Now Wicklow, we went up to Wicklow in Auckland in the league, the final round of the league, and they gave us a bit of a trimming. But I think that the Tipp team that played against Limerick is not the Tipp team that played against Sligo and played against Antrim yesterday.
Yeah, I'd say that Tipperary have just found their rhythm as things have gone on. There was a huge setback yesterday, but I think they'll approach this game with Wicklow, forearmed. They got it beaten in the league. They know how Wicklow play, and I think they'll really have to go up there and change tack, but within their capabilities. But like they're going to need to produce something great to beat Wicklow, because they're a tough side to play in Auckland. They had a really good Division 4 league, but it's there for Tipperary, and you just know Niall Fitzgerald wants success. He's really pushing this team on and pushing them to their limits. And like there's a lot of young players there.
They're very, very young,
playing for him. Mark Corcoran, excellent player there in defence. Jack O'Neill, Charlie King, James Morris, Joe Higgins in around centre field, got a goal yesterday. Micheál Freeney is still young and trying to get into the game, and like
Keane Smith, Dahi Hogan. I mean, if you take the average age of the players you've just mentioned, it's 23, 24. But I got to go, Stephen. But yeah, I know it's a disappointing defeat, but I think we're on the right trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. The team is going in a good direction, and hopefully we'll produce that performance against Wicklow. And if we're in the game with 10 minutes to go, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, we've got shooters and we've got scores. That's true. Stephen, thanks for your time.
Cheers, Ron.
All the best. Stephen Gleeson joining us there. Lots to come, lots of texts coming in, which I'll come to in a minute. But I just want to say good evening to Murtagh Brennan, the County Board Secretary, CEO, I think it is. I don't. I'm good, Murtagh. And Murtagh, we're going to confine this conversation to Liz Howard, and I'll come to Liz in a second, because the dust is barely settled on our Munster Championship. It would be unfair of me to start putting you on the spot with less than 24 hours since the curtain came down on the Munster Championship. So just a sort of, if people are wondering why isn't he asking him this, that and the other, I just think that's for another day, Murtagh. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's no problem at all.
Okay. But I think it is important we mark the passing of Liz Howard, because I've known Liz for a number of years, and she was like, even when I came into Tipp FM first in 2002, she was the County Board PRO. I think it's fair to say a woman, a person who absolutely adored Gaelic games.
Oh, she did, Ronan. I mean, I was only down at the Church of the Holy Spirit in Newtown today, and the great and good from the LGFA, the Camogie, GA, not just within the county but nationally. I think she was just a woman who transcended all the three organisations, and it was testament to the crowd that showed up, and to the rapturous round of applause she received in the Gaelic grounds, and up in Curragh Park also this weekend. And a true lady, and a huge loss to Tipperary and to the GA in general.
And not just the GA, but also the Camogie Association. She's a former president of the Camogie Association. Had her views, you mightn't have always agreed with her views, but you had to admire not only the way in which she expressed them, but also her willingness to engage in debate too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. She always calls it as it was. For me, Ronan, I found I got to know Liz, I suppose, when I came into the role, really 4 years at this stage. And I found her, if I had to sum up one word, it would be mentor. And I think she was a mentor to a lot of people. I know in my role it can be a particularly, I suppose, lonely position at times. And it was lovely. You could ring Liz on the way to work, have a long commute to work, and you could talk things through with her in terms of the different issues of the day. And she was a really good sounding board, really ahead of her time, and was always able to give great advice and guidance. And I suppose how to navigate the waters of the GEA world, the Camogie world, the LGFA world. Particular integration coming down the tracks. Massive loss in that regard.
Indeed.
She was very, 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 very aware and very interested and always willing to help.
She will be a debater we will miss having when that integration conversation gets closer to pass. I think it's all, in an age when we're used to seeing really good analysts like Cora Staunton and Ursula Jacob on the Sunday game, it's worth bearing in mind who the first ever female pundit on the Sunday game was. It was Liz Howard.
And to do that in 1979 when things were remarkably different than they are now, and I suppose the opportunities weren't there, I suppose a testament to her character and her ability to even just back herself, but even an organisation to back her to put her on national television. And she acquitted herself well. But even becoming PRO, in the GEA, back when she did at that time too, it was when I suppose the female representation wasn't as good as it is now, and I suppose it could always be better. And to hold that role for such a long period of time and to do so in a very distinguished manner, that just speaks volumes to her manner in which she could get on with people and bring the organisation along, bring people along with her. And she's forthright in her views, but God, that's great in my opinion. If someone is actually upfront and honest and can tell it to you how it is, Liz wouldn't be shy about pulling you aside and saying, put on your shirt and tie. You represent Tipperary, and it was great to have that. It's great to have people like that are, not afraid to tell you how they feel and what way the office should be kept. She was well ahead of her time, and she'd be sorely missed.
Well, if anyone deserves an epitaph, it would be Liz Howard, and it would be there's nobody greater than Tipperary, which I think she said often and regularly and often. And anyway, may she rest in peace, and we extend our condolences to the Howard family. Murt, thanks for your time tonight. We'll catch up in due course.
No problem, Roland. Thanks very much. God bless.
Murtagh Brennan, CEO of the GAA, the Tipperary County Board, on the sad passing, untimely as well, I should say, passing of Liz Howard. Let's move on. David Burns is on line 2. David, how are you?
I'm well, Ronan, and you?
David, I'm going to start putting my few euros on anything sired by Star Spangled Banner. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. What a stallion he seems to be in the making, and what a weekend he's had as well. And no better start, of course, at the weekend than the 2000 Guineas for Aidan O'Brien with Gestad. How impressive was he after running so well at Newmarket? But Gestad was absolutely brilliant under Ryan Moore, and was a brilliant performance to win the 2000 Guineas, won by 3 lengths of distance Storm. And you'd imagine there could even be further improvement to come from him. But you are right, Star Spangled Banner certainly has going to have a big impact on the flat racing the way he's producing them so far.
Yeah, I found it interesting. Gestad ran well at Newmarket, but didn't get over the line, and yet was very, very impressive in the Curragh. It's over the same distance. How different a track are they?
Yeah, slightly different. I suppose the Curragh is more of a level track. You've got the dip at Newmarket, and some horses handle that. But I don't think that was really the issue with Gestad.
Is it ground?
I think he bumped into a really top class horse. That's what it was in Bo Echo. I think Bo Echo is very, very good, and I think that will be seen as the season goes on. And look, Gestad got his chance in the race. Look, Distant Storm, he was a long way ahead of him at Newmarket, Gestad, and he franked that form on Saturday at the Guineas. And I do think that the winner at Newmarket, Ronan, I think it was a very, very good horse, Bo Echo, and there had been much thought about him before the 2000 Guineas at Newmarket. And to be fair, that form was well franked by Gestad on Saturday in winning impressively by the 3 lengths from Distant Storm from Charlie Appleby.
Ryan Moore has an embarrassment of riches to choose from when he goes to work every morning, but he chose true love. Wouldn't be the first man to make a mistake in that.
No, absolutely not. But yeah, it was a fascinating race on Sunday. But Precise didn't get the clearest of runs in the in the 1,000 guineas at Newmarket. And Ryan Moore, once his chance had gone, he minded her very much so. And it was interesting just before the race on Sunday that Aidan was interviewed on RTE television, and you could see that he knew that there wasn't going to be too much between them. And I think the way Precise absolutely picked up and ate the ground inside the final four
from last to first, I think.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was beautiful to see, and how good she could be. There could be, again, any amount of improvement. But looking at Aidan O'Brien's team, we're a couple of weeks out now from the Derby, and Royal Ascot, it's just a real strong level of contenders there. A brilliant weekend for the team at Ballydoyle over the weekend, and I'd be surprised if Precise doesn't step well forward again from that victory on Sunday. I was just very impressed with what she picked up. It was really good.
Go to the Oaks?
I would imagine that will certainly be spoken about. Again, it'll be interesting to see. They've got such a strong team for the Oaks at Epsom. It'll be very interesting to see whether they will decide. The way she galloped to the line on...
There's plenty more left, yeah.
I'd imagine so. So, look, we've got some really good ones for the Oaks as well. So, I imagine they're not going to put all their eggs into the one basket, and they'll try and split them up best way they can to try and take as much as they can out of the pot through the season.
As you can imagine, David, this is a busy time for us here in Extra Time. I've got to move on. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ronan.
Not at all. David Burns joining us there with news of the Curragh the Guineas weekend at the Curragh, and success once again for Coolmore. Barry Ryan's on the line. How are you, Barry?
How are you, Ronan?
The FAI Junior Cup is the hardest thing to win in sport. A good friend of both of ours tells us all the time, and it is an extremely difficult thing to win. Nobody knows that better than St Michael's, who have a storied history with it. They had a 5th round home draw, and I suppose whenever you get to the latter stages of the FAI Junior Cup, that's all you can ask for is a home draw. But they drew the favourites, and they drew the holders, and probably favourites for the thing again.
Yeah, look, they drew Fairview Rangers, and look, we talked about fixtures and stuff like that, and it was going to be very, very difficult. Look, it was going to be difficult to play Fairview Rangers with 10 days rest, let alone 3 days rest, and that proved to be the case. They lost Jimmy Carr after a couple of minutes in the previous Wednesday night in the league decider. They lost Luke Ryan and DJ Cremens after 20 minutes, and they were the walking wounded going into the game, and they were duly beaten 3-0. They were never, look, I said it before, I said it to you last week, they wouldn't even have an opportunity to raise a gallop.
Yeah, you did say that, and I wonder whether playing so many frontliners in the FAI Senior Cup might, in hindsight's 2020 vision, I wouldn't be one to second guess Johnny Cremens, but might he have perhaps rested one or two more?
Absolutely. Look, there's no point getting away from it. Fairview were in the exact same position. They played Lucan in the FAI Senior Cup. They decided the game had of no relevance to the McGlamor friendly. They left out Jeffrey Judge. They left out Dara Rainsford. All the players they left out scored. All 3 players were left out scored. They didn't even have them in the squad for the FAI Senior Cup game. And I think in hindsight, St Michael should have done the same. They should have put out a mixture of the youths and the B team, and a couple of lads they needed a few minutes. And all their eggs should have been on Wednesday and the following Saturday night.
Yeah, I do take that, but you also have to accept the integrity of the competition, that you've been chosen of one of the 4 junior clubs in Ireland to go into the FAI Senior Cup. There's a bit of privilege that comes with that, and with privilege comes responsibility.
Yeah, and look, I felt, and I'm sure Johnny Cremens would agree, that if the TSDL felt that way as they were our representatives in the FAI Senior Cup, the fixtures should have been amended. But once the fixtures weren't amended locally, I think then St Michael's had to say, well, look, there's nothing we can do here in relation to the FAI Senior Cup game. But look, again, it's hindsight of 2020. It was a difficult decision probably for everybody.
Yeah, it was. And, they had the disappointment of the league on Wednesday night. And do you think that kind of muddied the waters a little bit for them?
Yeah, look, I suppose it's probably, I made the point a couple of weeks ago about, when you win games, you're not as tired, you bounce from one game to the next game, and I just think you still obviously bear the physical toll of playing these games, but I think when you've lost on Wednesday in the circumstances that they lost and stuff as well, and it was so tight, that was always going to make Saturday even more difficult. Yeah, indeed. Now, the Shield finals took place as well, and Tumal Boris warmed up for their Tipperary Cup final, which is this Friday night, with that win over at Peak. Yeah, well, that should come with in the Tipperary Cup final. Sorry? It's Peak Villa that are in the Tipperary Cup final. I do apologise. I thought it was Tumal Boris. I'm sorry. So Tumal Boris beat Peak Villa in the Shield final
It's Bancha. You're right. It's Bancha and Peak.
Yeah. So Peak Villa will play Bancha now next Friday night. But Two Mile Burris captured the Shield. And look, you know what? It was no mean achievement for Two Mile Burris, because last year they won the Tipperary Cup, and they followed it up this year with a consecutive trophy, which is a Premier Division Shield, which is fair going in an era that has St Michael's and Peak Villa flying in the TSDL. And you know what? I am critical at times of the TSDL and stuff like that, with fixtures and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people would echo my sentiments. I always love to see Burris do well because of Blondie Clossy. Even in terms of my own playing career, different things, if I ever needed to pick up a phone or whatever, he was a guy in the TSDL that was always accessible to you, would always give you an honest answer, do his best to help you if he could. If he couldn't, he'd tell you straight out. But I always love to see Burris do well, because I know what he puts into that club, and he's someone who I just would have the utmost respect for in the TSDL, because I always thought he's been there for the betterment of Tipperary football, and I was delighted to see him in the photos after the game, and I'm sure he would have really, really enjoyed that one.
Last question, and it's a very quick answer, I'm afraid. Shoreside and Old Bridge in the Division 2 relegation finished 0-0. What happens now?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I would have 0-0 in that game. I would have been shocked. There's always goals there, so I'm not sure how that one will play out now.
A round robin means there's probably more than somebody else in it.
Yeah, I would think so. Otherwise, it would have been played to an outcome on the day.
Yeah, that's true. Listen, Barry, we got to go. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks a million, Ronan.
Talk soon. Thanks indeed. One texter says, Ronan, you didn't have to move on fast from the hurling tonight. Well, unfortunately, we only have an hour. We've an awful lot of sport to cover, and hurling, like every week on the show, gets the lion's share of what we cover. Thanks to everyone who contributed to tonight's show. I'm sorry if I didn't get out to read out your particular text. Ian O'Connor produced tonight's show. A podcast of tonight's show will be available in a few minutes on streaming platforms. Until then, and until next week, good night and good luck.
Online,
on your smartphone,
on your smart speaker,
play Tipp FM,
and on FM across
at 8. Good